Today we're discussing a level of grammar that will help kind of break open wide most of the sentences that you write. So far in our study of grammar, you've been focusing on a number of sentences, core structures like subjects, predicates, direct objects, indirect objects, and so on. But certain portions of your sentences may have remained mysterious, where you look at them and say, I have no clue what's going on there. Once you account for clauses, like dependent clauses, and you account for verbals, then pretty much you know what goes on in sentences. So once you get through verbals and verbal phrases and dependent clauses, and they are tough, but once you get through those, pretty much every sentence that you will utter or hear will be open for your analysis and, of course, ownership, which is always good. So let's get into verbals. Today we're only going to go over the concepts of verbals. We're not exercising any diagramming. Diagramming will be taken care of tomorrow when the sentence analysis is due. So don't forget about sentence analysis due tomorrow, and we'll work on diagramming these. But right now, definitions. Verbals are words and phrases that used to be verbs. They once were verbs. They are no longer. And if you say, how can that be so, Mr. Clarkson? Remember that words are just like people. They are what they do. So a word is only a certain part of speech, noun, verb, whatever, based upon what it's doing in the sentence. Verbals are words that usually act as verbs, but have been used in a different way. Adjectives, nouns, adverbs. Evan? No, in that case, run is both noun and verb. You're kind of close, kind of correct, but the verbals require a sort of transformation, suffixes added and so on. So let me show you, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The first one is the participial. You have three, by the way. Three verbals. The participial is fairly easy to recognize. It's either a present or a participle, or I'm sorry, a present or a past participle verb. Present participles are easy. Can you tell me what suffixes are added to present or verbs to make them present participles? Lizzie? No, those are comparatives and superlatives, and those are adjectives. So if I want to say great, and then greater is the comparative, greatest is the superlative. Okay? Talking about verbs, present participles. I add a suffix. Ing. I-N-G. So run as a verb becomes running. Now, Evan, if you were to say, I love running, now you got a verbal. Okay. And I'll add some more detail to that. ING are your present participle endings. What about past participle endings? ED, sometimes, not always. Why? Because we have lovely irregular verbs in English. So, if I have right here a pencil, what did I do to this pencil? I broke it. Broke is the simple past tense of the verb to break. What's the past participle? Breaking is the present. What's the past? I have broken. There you go. Broken is the past participle. So are they ED verbs? Sometimes. Sometimes they're irregular. For the past, you can't really tell what the suffix will be. It depends upon the verb. The broken pencil. What is it acting as? These words act as adjectives. The swimming fish. Can you give me other examples? The broken pencil, the swimming fish. The laughing kids, Zara. You're about to say laughing? Good, we have positivity all around. Evan? The running man. More?
The dying cat.
The dying cat. All right, let's end it there. Best. Oh, Abby, sorry. Didn't mean to upset you. I know, we have laughing kids, we have running men, and then we have dying cats. The crushed cans littered the street. Mid-level depression there. Crushed cans littered the street. What is your verb? Okay, littered. What is your verbal? Crushed. Remember, doesn't matter what it looks like. It matters what it does. This modifies cans, tells you what kind of cans. Littered is the action that the cans, noun, are performing. That's a verbal. The second, gerund. I like gerunds because they're easy and they've got a cool name. Some students just really don't want to pronounce this word. I'm not quite sure why, but it's gerund. Not gerund or gerund or any sort of fancy French pronunciation. You should be American and uncouth and say gerund. Probably has a Germanic derivation anyway. It's a present participle verb. This is an easy one. You don't have to deal with the irregular past participles, only ing verbs. So these are simple to spot. But they're different from participials because they're not adjectives. Zach? Very good. They're nouns. Excellent. Did you remember gerund from somewhere down the line? For some reason, gerunds stick with students. Maybe it's the cool name. I don't know. But they're also pretty easy to recognize and understand. Zach, can you give us an example? Ing verb used as a noun. I like jumping. There you go. That's a nice one. I like jumping. Zach, advanced question. In your sentence, I like jumping, what is jumping? I know it's a gerund, it's a noun, but what role in the sentence is it fulfilling? Nope. Correct. It's directly being liked. It's receiving the action of your liking, therefore it's a direct object. Direct objects are always nouns. Let's pause for a moment in our study of gerunds to remind ourselves of something really important. Nouns. In a sentence, nouns can only perform 5 discrete actions. What can they be? Subject, direct object, indirect object. Zach, you got predicate nominative. Nope, because that's an adjective. Zach's doing really well. By the way, Zach's doing really well because I believe he's the only person in the room that has a background in studying Latin. Probably why he understands some of the grammar. You know the fifth? What else can nouns do? The stapler on the table. Table is acting as what? Object of a prepositional phrase. Thank you. Object of a prepositional phrase. If you want to make a gerund, you use an ing verb for any one of those tasks. Shopping can be fun. Here, we're still positive. What is shopping in that sentence? Subject. I like shopping. Direct object. Let's see. I'm not sure I can use shopping in certain other positions, but I could say, oh, this is teaching. What is teaching? Nope, because is a linking verb, predicate nominative. Excellent. So I can use the ing verbs in any one of those positions. The last one, simple to spot. Probably the easiest to spot, because with gerunds you can spot them easily, but you're not quite sure if it's a gerund or a participial, because both can be ing verbs. Infinitives are easy. Aaron, we've talked about it before. Do you remember what infinitives are in English? What foreign language do you study? French. What's the French infinitive? What's the ending, suffix ending on French infinitives? Come on, your French teacher's going to love you when you're recorded on YouTube giving the correct answer to the French question in the English classroom. Is it ER?
Yeah.
That's ER. French is what? Usually ER is your suffix, okay? English doesn't do that. English doesn't use suffixes for infinitives. Do you remember? That's okay, Aaron. I don't want to make you cry or anything. Christian, place to in front of it. Remember now? To. To read, to go, to do, to make, to bake, to smile, to laugh. What? No. I intentionally left that one off the list, Philip. Unconjugated verb with the preposition to. Easy to spot. You can find these in a sentence with no problem. More difficult to tell what it is doing because infinitives can actually fulfill one of three tasks. They can be nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. That makes them easy to see, tricky to understand. I love to read. What is the infinitive in this sentence? Daniel? Correct. What job is it taking? What's it doing in the sentence? Right. What I love, therefore it is what? Nope. It's what I love. That's right. Here's another pause for some grammar insight. We already went into the 5 roles of nouns. If you have a verb or a phrase that is answering a what question, it is acting as a noun. If you have a verb or phrase that is answering a which question, what role is it playing? Adjective. If you have a word or phrase that it's answering a how question, what is it? Adverb. A when question. Adverb. A why question. Adverb. A where question. Adverb, or it could be adjective also, depending upon how it's used. But you've got one of those two. Now to back up, Daniel had the right idea and he could see what it was doing. He just needs to make that next connection. So he's saying it's what you love, therefore it's a noun and it's direct object. Grammatical analysis is a series of questions and answers, and the simpler the question, the easier it is to answer, and you build from one to the next. So what you should be doing in this class is listening to how I coach you through some of these questions, the questions that I ask, and eventually sort of internalizing that set of questions. Because I do this the exact same way I ask you to do it in class. I just do it faster and on my own. But I ask myself these questions. So if I said, what is to read? I don't know. What information is it giving me? It's telling me what I love. Oh, must be a noun, therefore must be a direct object, receiving the action of loving. One last advancement to this concept. Verbals can be the first word in an entire verbal phrase. They're not even always the first word, but they're the core word in a verbal phrase. You identify the verbal, it should be pretty easy to identify the verbal phrase. So Evan's already chomping at the bit for the first one. Hanging from the ledge, the lemur muttered a small prayer. What's the verbal phrase? Hanging from the ledge. Now I've identified Evan as a participial, therefore it's modifying a noun. What noun is it modifying? Lemur. Is correct. Christian, next one. Framing the deck proved the most difficult part. Framing the deck. Excellent. It's a gerund, which means it's a noun, but what noun job is it doing? Correct. Somehow, she found the will to strive for perfection. Hunter.
To strive for perfection.
That's correct. To strive for perfection. That's my infinitive phrase. Doing what?
Modifying the direct object.
Therefore acting as? Correct. Nice. Good job. What I want you to do when you're seeing verbal phrases is treat this as one big chunk, one thing. I want you to treat this as one thing. I want you to treat this as one thing, intact. That'll help you take a sentence that might be 23 words and knock it down to quite a fewer chunks. Much easier to understand, diagram, analyze, and so on. Let's work through some examples. Let's see here. Let's start with Phil. Let's say you have absolutely no clue about this sentence. I've given you this sentence on a test. I've asked you a question like identify the verbal phrase, and you're thinking, no idea. Start with basic questions. What do I do first? Lizzie? Identify the verb. Joanna, what's the verb? Agreed is correct. Marisa, what's the noun, the subject? Correct. If you can go to noun subject, the simple subject and the simple predicate, the noun verb pair, then you can start to build the sentence around that. So we have Phil agreed. One other piece of information. Agreed. Linking or action? Action. Phil is agreeing to something. It is an action that he's performing. Okay. Good enough. We're looking for verbals and verbal phrases. Coral, can you see one in there? Excellent. Your infinitive is to give. And do you see the full infinitive phrase? The full infinitive phrase would be everything kind of connected directly to give. Correct. To give me a ride. Now, Coral, if you take a look at that, to give kind of looks like a verb, right? It's a verbal. So if we imagine that this is kind of like a verb, what is mean kind of like? Or what is ride kind of like? I know my kind of like question is not very specific, but I'm seeing if you can see the pattern. Zara. They're both nouns, that's correct. And nouns connected to verbs are usually what part of the sentence? I love reading. She walked the dog. The dog reading. Jenna, help out. There you go. Verbal phrases are often, they look like little mini sentences. But what's it missing? It's missing a subject. That's why it is a phrase. Definition of a phrase?
Not a complete subject predicate.
That's true. What's the other part of the definition of a phrase? Not necessarily. Right, subject or predicate, that's correct, but we don't have the complete pair. That's implied. More than one word, that's correct. So, more than one. Phrases grouped together to act as a single part of speech. And now we get to the big question. This phrase, Coral, that you identified, is acting as what? Remember, it's infinitive, and infinitive means it could be noun, it could be adjective, or it could be adverb. Which one do you think it is? Tell you what, if you're having trouble, go through process of elimination. Can it be an adjective? In order for it to be an adjective, it would have to modify a noun. What noun do you have in the sentence? Right. Doesn't seem to modify fill, does it? Okay, so it's not an adjective. Adverb, you've got one verb in there, right? Agreed. Is it telling me how I agreed or when I agreed? No. So it's not an adverb. Therefore, it's a noun. What job is it fulfilling? What noun job? Remember, I've got the 5. It's not subject because subject's already taken, right? It's not an object of a prepositional phrase because I would need to have a preposition right there. So what do you think it is? It's okay. Abby, help her out. Direct object. Coral, you did a great job. That last little bit, it's a direct object. What's being agreed? It's what's receiving the action. The agreement is abstract. So what's being agreed? This offer of action to give me a ride. Remember the questioning technique. If you run into a sentence, and I'm asking you a question on a test, and that test says this infinitive phrase, what's it doing? And you're not quite sure, process of elimination, folks. I think that students fail when they think out of the realm of possible answers, I must hit the correct answer immediately because I know it. No, no, no. Work toward that answer. And working toward that answer could be process of elimination. You narrow it down, you find out that it's a noun, ask yourself some more questions, eventually you'll get to direct object. Hunter, what do you got? Finding a needle in a haystack. How'd you identify that? It came to you in a vision. That's right. There was a burning bush and it said finding a needle in a haystack. Come on, for those people who are not struck by insight, Hunter, I understand. For me, it would appear immediately too. But we need to unpack how exactly our brains found that. What were you looking for when you were looking in that sentence?
Well, I was looking for like a noun subject, like a subject predicate pair.
Oh, good.
You don't find it when you just say finding a needle in a haystack because there's no like subject.
Okay. So you're saying I'm looking for a noun verb pair that looks like a verb but there's no subject to it, so I know it's got to be a verbal, right? Okay, excellent. That's one way of going about it. Another way of going about it, if you know you're looking for verbals, what do you look for? ING. You find ING. You find ING. Do you see any past participles? What else do you look for? Well, you've looked for past participles. You look for present participles. 2. Okay, that's how you chart it. Look for those. Let's look at the first one. Finding a needle in a haystack. Looks like it's a verbal phrase. Hunter, what job is it performing in the sentence?
Subject.
Subject. How do you know that?
Oh, is that because?
How do you know it?
Oh, yeah. Because it kind of acts as the subject.
If it's a subject, it's got to be doing or linked to the verb.
Yeah.
What's the verb?
Would be easier.
Right. And if you ask yourself what would be easier, what's the answer?
What we're trying to do. Oh, finding the needle.
I've asked the what question. What would be easier? I'm looking for a noun. The what question looks for a noun. What would be easier? Finding a needle in a haystack, and therefore it's the subject. Let's look at the rest. Do we have other verbals in there? Remember, a verbal is a word that sometimes and mostly acts like a verb, but now it's not. Let's look at that trying. Verbal or no, and how would you know? Evan's saying no. Why, Evan? Basically, Evan is saying that a noun already owns it. If a noun is already doing that action, it's a verb. Therefore, trying is not a verbal, it's a verb because it's connected. Remember what Hunter said? He said there's nothing connected to finding, so it must be a verbal. How about to do? Abby? It looks like an infinitive, right? How would you know that it's not? I'm sorry? Here, I'll help you out a little bit, Zach. Anybody know? That's correct. Prepositional phrase. If that's the truth, then why do I know that to do is an infinitive? Zach, you were saying it. Because, well, that's true, but more simply, do is a verb, right? So if you're saying, hey, I've got the word to, is it a prepositional phrase or is it an infinitive? Look at the word that follows. If the word that follows is a verb, equals infinitive. If the word that follows is a noun, it equals a prepositional phrase. We've identified it as an infinitive. Evan? Students say I do my homework all the time. It's I can't stand it as a main verb. I think it's okay as a helping verb. I did complete my homework. That works fine. But students often use the word do as a weak verb. It's not the number one weak verb. It's not even number 2 or 3. Your top 3 weak verbs are, anybody know? Some form of the verb to be, to have. No, that's a form of the verb to be. To get. To be, to have, to get. To do is weak, but not on that big list. What is this infinitive? If it's an adverb, it's modifying. It's telling me how. It's telling me where. It's telling me when. What would it be modifying? Is it modifying try? It's telling me how I'm trying. It's not telling me how I'm trying. What is it telling me? Therefore, bingo. Remember, ask yourself the question. What is it telling me? It's telling me what I'm trying. What equals now? Direct object. Kale, noun verb. Subject predicate, noun verb. Have is the verb, very good. So what's my noun? No, the paper's not having. Correct. Noun verb, I have. Chad, find the verbal. To write. Tell me the entire verbal phrase. Excellent. To write before class. If that's the case, Logan, what is a paper? Not an indirect object. You're really close. Right. It's directly being had. All right. We've charted it. We have, oh, I'm sorry, Chad. What type of verbal was this? Participial, gerund, or infinitive? Correct. We've just charted the sentence pretty easily. We've got noun, verb, direct object, and infinitive. What's the infinitive doing? Jillian, give it a shot. To write before class. What information is it giving you? What's it doing? Remember, when you're asking this question, it must relate to another word out here. So what word does it seem to be acting on? It's telling you how to have. So it must be telling you how or when to have. When do you want to have it? To write before class. That doesn't really mean. How do you have it? To write before class. I'm not sure it's an adverb. So what would it be modifying? Which paper? The paper to write before class. Yeah, it's telling you which paper. Therefore, it's an adjective. Yeah. Why you have a paper? Why you have a paper to write before class as opposed to which paper you have. Well, let me put it this. Let me try this, Philip. Let's double checking. You've learned mathematics techniques for double checking your work, right? If it's an adverb, you should be able to move it. So let's move it. To write before class, I have a paper. Does that make sense? No. So that's what I would do. Seriously, I'm not trying to make fun of you, Philip. You actually asked me a question I had to think about. And I used one of my checking techniques, and that's moving the adverb. Remember what I said about adjectives? In English syntax, they've got to sit right behind, or adjective phrases have to sit right behind the nouns they modify. So that's why I would believe it's modifying paper. And to double check, I move it. If I move it and it still makes sense, you're right, it's an adverb. But I moved it, doesn't make sense, so got to be that adjective. Zach, in the back. Noun verb. We intended. Very good. You find the verbal. Find the verbal phrase. What's it doing? Remember, infinitives can act as any one of these three parts of speech. Adverb, modifying how you intended. How did we intend to leave early? I'm not sure it's how. I'm sorry? Why did you intend? I'm not sure it's why either. What did you intend to leave early? So rephrase it as that question and check your work. Why did you intend to leave early? Doesn't make so much sense. When did you intend to leave early? No, if it were just saying early, we intended early, then it would be an adverb. But here, it's saying what we intended to do. Abby, you had a question, or are you just going to sit? Okay. Yes, direct object. Philip, noun verb. Lynn, knew, very good. Where's the verbal? Having been a gymnast, excellent. And it narrows it down to participial or gerund. Which do you think it is and why? Gerund, if it's a gerund, it's got to do one of the noun jobs. Which noun job would it be doing? It can't be the subject, right? You've already identified the subject. Can't be the object of prepositional phrase because there's no preposition out here. What else do we have? Direct object. Is it what Lynn is knowing? Lynn's knowing having been, no. Doesn't seem to be indirect object. And I have a linking or an action verb, so it can't be a predicate nominative. So it's got to be participial. Who is having been a gymnast? Who's it describing, Philip? Lynn. Yep. Quick hint on those. The rule for commas. Introductory phrases. That means a phrase that precedes the subject. are separated by the subject with a comma. So if you begin with a prepositional phrase, if I say, in the boat, the monkey laughed. In the boat, comma, the monkey laughed. Having been a gymnast, gerunds are never just right there with a comma. Gerunds are always, if they're at the beginning, there's no comma, or they're somewhere else in the sentence. So if I looked at that immediately, I'd remember that rule and I'd say, oh, participial, even without looking at the content. Katie, you have a question?
Yeah, which part, like, is it the past, something or the past verb? Is it new or been?
Oh, been is a past participle of is.
So that's how it's also not a gerund.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask the question about that word. There's some complexity in that word. In other words, there's a verbal inside a verbal. But let's just look at the overall verbal right now because I don't want to overwhelm you with that. Having been, having is your verbal participial. And this entire phrase, having been a gymnast, tells you about Lynn. Okay? Don't worry about been right now. It is a past participle. So you're correct for noticing that there's something going on. Dolores? Yes. Notice it's not spelled as the umbrage of Harry Potter fame. Why would the umbrage of Harry Potter fame be spelled differently? Sorry? Oh, that's a good explanation because it's British. That's true. However, I believe, not knowing Ms. Rowling, I believe that she's playing with the language because of the dole root, which means what? Yeah. Dole means to inflict suffering. So she spells it D-O-L to use one of your, I know, it's tricky. That's why we have that Harry Potter extra credit, because she's using roots that you should know to create that meaning. But apparently this is a happier, gentler Dolores. So Dolores noticed her cousin walking along the shoreline. Michelle, what's my noun-verb pair? Dolores noticed, excellent. And Michelle, can you find the participial? I just said it was a participial. I meant to say verbal, but okay, I gave you the next answer. Walking, and what's the participial phrase? Since I told you it was a participial, that means it's modifying a noun. What is it modifying? Cousin. One last question. What is her cousin in the sentence? Correct. Noun, verb, direct object, and then I've got an adjective modifier. It's a participial phrase. Might have time quickly for one more. Zach. What? Pointing? Oh, cool. Bailey, let's just jump right to the chase. Find the verbal. Being the boss. Excellent. You found the verbal phrase. See right off the bat. Zach's faith proves true. What is it? Is it a gerund or is it a participial? And you have to ask yourself, what's it doing? That's right, it's a gerund. What noun role is it fulfilling? What's it doing in the sentence? Remember, subject, direct object, object, preposition, and so on. It's a noun, but which sentence job is it doing? What's this? That makes this what? Somebody help her out. Subject, thank you. Bailey, don't worry about it. It's grammar, and somehow the temperature in this room rose, and we all get really sleepy when it gets hot. So I understand. No worries. But yeah, Zach is correct. Tomorrow we diagram. Sentence analysis number 8. Please don't forget about it.